Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Died Before High School? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Bakugo's POV. I woke up to the sound of my annoying alarm clock ringing and rose from my bed to turn it off. I went downstairs to get some breakfast, maybe even a drink if I'm not too late for school. I walked down the stairs and froze. My mom was waiting at the bottom, her expression caught somewhere between fear and sorrow. I also saw my dad hugging her with a weird expression on his face as well. I didn't know what was happening at all. I was confused, maybe even a little scared. My parents never ever acted like this in front of me. Mom, Dad? What's wrong? I said it in a shaky voice. My dad started to speak, stopped himself, then met my eyes. Katsuki, come down here. We need to talk. It's important. Okay, I guess. I walked down the stairs and felt very scared. My mom's dreary eyes met mine, and right as she saw me I could see a tear run down her cheek. Dad, what's going on? Katsuki, there's no school today. Yeah, and? I said in a confused tone. There's no school because Izuku unfortunately took his own life this morning before school. My heart dropped and all of a sudden a tear was running down my face. One tear, then two, then three. Now I'm sobbing. My heart ached. Why would such a happy person kill themselves? It didn't make sense. Katsuki stopped bullying him only in the first year of Aldra. We need to go to the hospital to comfort Inko. Izuku is now hooked up to machines and crap. And if they can't help him, he's good as Jigon, Mitsuki added in a quiet voice. So you're telling me, if something goes wrong he might die? I said. Yeah, most likely. Can I go in the C car? Yes, cats, go ahead, will be over here. I walk outside of my house and the world for some reason feels heavier. Everything hurts, and the thing that hurt me the most was knowing that I couldn't help him, Izuku, to survive. In the middle of glass part of the door I could see my parents hugging each other. My mom crying and my dad was most likely crying too. Izuku was a special person to us and now he's gone. My parents finally came outside after what felt like 20 minutes. Though I hadn't been keeping track, I was too numb to care. I hadn't changed out of my pajama pants, just grabbed the nearest sweater and threw it on before walking out the door. I looked like a mess, but it didn't matter. None of it did. The car ride was completely silent. No one spoke, no one even tried. The air was thick with something unspoken, something terrifying. I sat in the back seat, staring blankly out the window, fighting the sting behind my eyes. I was still on the verge of crying, but I swallowed the sobs down, afraid that even the smallest sound would shatter whatever fragile stillness was keeping us together. I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to face what was waiting for us. Time moved strangely. Every minute felt like an hour, every breath like a wait. Finally, after what seemed like forever but was only 15 minutes, we pulled into the hospital parking lot. My parents rushed out of the car the second we stopped, running toward Inko, who was already waiting near the entrance. I followed behind them slowly, each step heavier than the last. I couldn't run. I couldn't even speak. I was too scared of what I might hear, of what I already knew deep down, and of what came next. I was shaking out of fear. Because when I entered the room I saw something that made me want to sit on the floor and sob. Izuku was wired up with IVS and random stuff that made no sense. Everything felt distant, like a dream I knew wasn't real, but I still couldn't wake up. My only love, Izuku, was laying in a hospital bed, on his deathbed. If I knew about what people were doing to him, it wouldn't have ended up this badly. Izuku stared at me with loving eyes and opened his mouth to talk but hesitated. It was either he was too nervous to say anything or he just couldn't talk. His eyes met mine one last time, and a single tear slid down his cheek. Then came the sound, piercing, cold, absolute. The flatline. Time stopped. My knees gave out, and I dropped to the floor, the world collapsing around me. Inko and my parents burst into the room, their faces pale, eyes wide with panic, but the second they saw me, everything shifted. They didn't need to ask. It was written all over me, on my face, in the way my hands shook, In the broken way, I sat hunched on the cold hospital floor. I was falling apart, completely and utterly. They could see it and none of them knew what to say. There was this strange, suffocating tension in the room. A silence so loud it made my ears ring. And in the middle of it all was a space, an aching, gaping hole that no one could fill. Not a doctor, not a parent, not even time. It belonged to Izuku. Only him. All I wanted was one last moment with him. Just a second. Just long enough to see his eyes, to hear him breathe, to feel him squeeze my hand and tell me it would be okay, even if it wouldn't be. I would have given anything for one more hug. One of those quiet, safe hugs that only he could give, the kind that made the world go still for a minute, like maybe things could be okay. But his body had already decided. It had already let go. His heart had chosen to stop, and I was left with nothing but silence and the echo of everything I'd never get to say. Bakugo's POV. I just wanted a hug. Something warm. Something grounding. I wanted the kind of hug that would pull me back into my body and remind me I was still alive, still here. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want answers. I just wanted my parents to hold me like they used to when things felt too big for me to handle. But they were too busy comforting Inko. And I got it. I really did. Her only son had just died. Her whole world had been ripped out from under her in the cruelest way possible, and nothing would ever make that okay. She deserved comfort. She deserved all of it. But even as I sat there shaking, empty, crying so hard it hurt, I couldn't help but feel forgotten. Like my pain was invisible in comparison. Like the space where Izuku used to be had swallowed all of us, but no one noticed I was still falling. My sobs cracked through the silence, echoing off the sterile hospital walls like glass breaking. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then I saw her, my mom. She looked at me, and something shifted in her eyes. Horror, dread, helplessness. It was like she hadn't really seen me until that moment. She crossed the room, slow and uncertain, and without saying a word, wrapped her arms around me from behind. Her hands trembled against my chest as she pulled me into her. I couldn't see her face, but I felt everything in that hug: fear, regret, love, and sorrow. She didn't try to fix it. She just held me while I fell apart. And for a moment, that was enough. It was warm and reassuring, but I could help but feel like my whole world was crumbling under my very own hands and I could do nothing about it. It felt like Izuku's death was my fault and I should be the one held accountable for him dying. But deep down inside I knew that it was those bullies' faults. They were the ones who pushed him to the edge and no one pulled him back. All Izuku needed in that moment was love, and I couldn't offer that to him. I loved him, God, I loved him more than anything. But love wasn't enough, was it? I wasn't enough. Not to save him. Not to shoulder the weight he carried in silence. And maybe that's what hurts the most. That even in all the late-night talks, the quiet handholds, the soft laughter between us, I wasn't someone he could trust with this. Not this. He bore it alone, all of it, while I stood just close enough to touch him, yet too far to truly see. And now he's gone, and I'm left choking on all the words I never said, all the signs I never saw. I would have carried it for him if he had just asked. I would have carried him. But he didn't ask. He didn't believe I could, and now I'll never get the chance to prove him wrong that I loved him, and maybe that was all I ever really had to give. Just love. Quiet, constant, imperfect love. And in the end, even that wasn't enough. All I wanted was one last moment, just a single hug, the warmth of his arms around me one more time. One last kiss on the cheek, soft and familiar, something to hold on to when everything else slipped away. He was everything to me. Someone I trusted without question. Someone I believed would always be there, even when the world felt like it was falling apart. But I guess I wasn't that person for him. I wasn't the one he could lean on when things got too heavy. He carried it all alone, even with me right beside him. And that's what breaks me. That he didn't trust me enough to stay. That maybe in the end, I just wasn't enough to make him stay. In the car. Bakugo's POV. The car ride home was suffocating in its silence. It wasn't peaceful, it was the kind of silence that felt like glass, so thin and stretched that even a breath too loud might shatter it. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I barely moved. Somehow, I felt that if I let anything slip out, even the smallest sound, my parents in the front seat might fall apart even more than they already had. So I just sat there, still and quiet, holding my grief in my chest like a secret too sharp to touch. But near the last 5 minutes of our quiet car ride, my mom decided to speak up. Inko just texted me that the funeral might be around next week. My mom spoke in the quietest, saddest voice I'd ever heard, so soft it barely felt real. It was the kind of voice that trembled at the edges, like she was holding herself together with threads, afraid that if she spoke any louder, she'd completely fall apart. And maybe that's why she kept her words so quiet, because breaking in front of me was something she couldn't allow herself to do. A silent, "okay," left my mouth, and that's all I could say for the rest of the car ride. Some of Izuku's last words echoed vividly in my mind, soft, lingering whispers I wish I could have held onto forever. They were words full of hope, even in the darkest moments, the things he somehow managed to say before he slipped away. "Don't give up on yourself, Katsuki. You're stronger than you think." And then there were the words I never found the courage to say back to him, things that now felt heavier than any silence. "I'm sorry I couldn't be better for you. Please don't carry this alone. I should have been there." These unspoken words clawed at me, fragments of a conversation lost in time, haunting every breath I took. "I miss you, Izuku," I thought as we arrived at the house. I woke up with a pounding migraine, the kind that crashes in like a storm, the same ones that always come with winter's chill or when I'm sick. But I wasn't sick. Not really. Just this relentless, grinding pain that settled deep behind my eyes and wouldn't let go. I didn't know what to do with it. Was it because of Izuku? Was my mind playing tricks on me, twisting grief into physical pain? Or was I just obsessing too much, as if thinking could change anything? This wasn't something I could think away. I lay there, trapped between the sharp pulse in my head and the dull ache in my chest, waiting for the pain to pass. My hand trembled as I reached into the cabinet for the Advil, trying not to let the nausea take hold. Every moment felt heavy, like I was carrying the weight of a world that had suddenly grown unbearably dark. I lay there, trapped between the sharp pulse in my head and the dull ache in my chest, waiting for the pain to pass. I heard my mom calling my name from downstairs, soft but urgent, like a lifeline I wasn't sure I could reach. Each word hit me like a hammer against my throbbing skull, making the migraine flare sharper, more relentless. The nausea I'd been desperately holding back twisted inside me, crawling up my throat like a living thing, and I knew I couldn't fight it much longer. My body betrayed me as I stumbled toward the bathroom, every step feeling heavier than the last. My hands trembled as I gripped the cold porcelain of the toilet, bracing myself not just for the sickness, but for the overwhelming wave of helplessness crashing over me. In that moment, I wasn't just battling pain or nausea. I was fighting the weight of everything I'd lost, everything I couldn't fix, and the unbearable silence that followed. "Katsuki, are you feeling okay? What's going on, hun?" Her voice was gentle but laced with worry as she stepped into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind her. I barely had the strength to look up, but when I did, she saw it, the raw pain etched deep into my eyes, a grief so heavy it seemed to drown the light. The dark circles under my eyes weren't just tiredness, they were evidence of sleepless nights filled with silent tears and unspoken fears. I felt exposed, stripped down to all the pieces I was desperately trying to hold together, and in that moment, the distance between us felt like an ocean I couldn't cross. "Katsuki, are you feeling okay? What's going on, hun?" Her voice was gentle but laced with worry as she stepped into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind her. "Don't know. My head's killing me." I wiped at my eyes, trying to hide the tears. "You've been pushing yourself too hard. Please talk to me. What's really hurting you?" "It's not just the headache. It's everything. Izuku, he's gone. And I'm supposed to be okay with that?" "I know, baby. I know this hurts more than words can say. We're all hurting. I should have done more. I should have been there for him. You loved him. That's all any of us can do. But you're not alone, Katsuki. We'll get through this together. I'm scared. Scared I'll never stop feeling this emptiness. That nothing will ever fill the space he left. Grief isn't a race. It's messy and slow. But you're not alone. We'll learn to live with the pieces together. I just wish I had more time. More chances. Me too, baby. Me too. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The only sound was the soft hum of the bathroom fan and the distant ticking of the clock, each second stretching into an eternity. In that stillness, a memory washed over me, clear and sharp like a photograph. Izuku's smile, soft and warm, the way his eyes lit up when he believed in something, when he believed in me. The last time we sat together, talking quietly under the dim glow of the streetlights, a moment I thought we had forever. I could almost hear his voice whispering, "Don't give up on yourself, Katsuki. You're stronger than you know." But that voice was gone now, swallowed by silence. My breath hitched, and I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the tears threatening to spill over. I wished I could go back to that moment. Tell him I was sorry. Tell him I loved him. Tell him I wouldn't let go, no matter what. But the past was out of reach. All that was left was this hollow ache inside me, a reminder of everything lost and everything I could never fix. I still felt hollow, like something inside me had caved in. Empty. And so guilty. The kind of guilt that claws at your ribs and sits heavy in your chest, whispering that it was your fault, even when no one said it out loud. I wasn't crying anymore. I couldn't. It was like my body had shut down to protect itself, leaving me stuck in this quiet, numb place where everything felt distant and too loud at the same time. My mind was spinning, filled with thoughts I didn't want to think, memories I didn't ask for, and pain I didn't know how to carry. I just wanted it all to stop for a minute, even just a second. I wanted something to ground me, to make the noise go quiet, to feel anything other than this emptiness eating me from the inside out. Then a thought crept in, quiet and cruel and far too familiar. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Like a shadow slipping through the cracks. I remembered the pencil sharpener I still had left over from school, tucked in the bottom of a drawer. My hand moved before I could think twice. I took it out carefully, unscrewing the tiny metal blade. It sat in my palm, small, harmless to anyone else. But to me, it was a promise of something quieter than grief. Something sharper than guilt. I stared at the blade resting in my palm. It wasn't much. Just a scrap of metal. Simple. Barely anything at all. But in that moment, it felt like everything, like a way to let something out when the rest of me was locked down too tight to scream. My hands trembled. Not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. I was so tired. Of pretending. Of holding it in. Of surviving in a world that didn't have Izuku in it anymore. My breathing came in shaky, uneven gasps. My chest ached like something was caving in. And my thoughts, the cruel ones, the ones I never wanted, kept whispering that maybe this was the only way to feel again. To punish myself for not being enough. For failing him. You weren't there. You should have known. He needed you. Each word landed like a punch to the ribs, over and over. Until I could barely breathe. I closed my eyes and let the blade press against my skin, just barely. Just enough to feel the cold bite of it. My heart raced in my ears, louder than any scream. Louder than any silence. But then, I heard it. My mom's voice. Just outside the door. Katsuki? One word. So rude. I didn't move. Sweetheart, you've been in there a long time. Her voice cracked. Like she already knew. Like she was holding her breath. I looked down at my hands. At the small metal piece. At the shaking mess I'd become. And suddenly, I hated that I was here again. In this place. In this pain. I hated how much I missed him. How much I loved him. And how much it still wasn't enough. Tears fell without permission, silent and burning. I didn't even realize I had started crying until my vision blurred. I pressed the blade to the counter instead and let it go. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to become another grief someone else would have to carry. And maybe that was the first real feeling I'd had in days. I'm fine, Mom. I was just brushing my teeth. Lost track of time, that's all. I'll be out in a sec. I tried to steady my voice, but it still came out a little too tight, a little too fast. If you say so, sweetheart. She hesitated, voice gentle but strained. When you're ready, can you come downstairs? Me and your dad, we need to talk to you about something. I wiped my face one last time, trying to make myself look normal, whatever that meant now. My eyes were still red, my expression hollow, but I didn't have it in me to pretend any harder. I stepped out of the bathroom, the blade long since hidden away, and walked downstairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. My parents were already waiting for me in the living room. My dad sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, while my mom stood with her arms folded, eyes locked on me the second I entered the room. "Sit down, Katsuki," she said gently. I obeyed without a word, dropping into the chair across from them, trying not to meet their eyes. The silence dragged for a moment before my dad finally spoke. "We need to talk to you about UA." The words hit harder than I expected. The dream. The goal. The one thing I'd worked toward since I was a kid, since Izuku and I were still just two boys with big ideas and stars in our eyes. Now it just felt distant. Cold. Like something I wasn't allowed to want anymore. "You're still going through with it, right?" my mom asked carefully. "The recommendations already in, and the exams in a few months." I hesitated. "I don't know." The answer hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. "Katsuki," my dad leaned forward, his voice calm but serious. "We're not trying to pressure you, but we need to know, can you handle this? Everything with Izuku, it's a lot. And UA isn't just some regular school. It's going to push you harder than anything else ever has." I didn't know what to say. Could I handle it? What kind of hero was I supposed to become when I couldn't even save the one person who meant everything to me? "It was our dream," I said quietly, voice cracking. "Both of ours. I don't know if it's still mine without him." My mom crossed the room and knelt in front of me, her hands gently cupping mine. "It still can be. But only if you want it. We just want to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and not because you think you have to prove something to him, to us, to yourself." I nodded, tears stinging the corners of my eyes again. I didn't know the answer yet. But for the first time in days, I let the question sit with me instead of running from it. Bakugo's POV. I was lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling like it might have the answers I couldn't find in myself. The question kept circling back no matter how hard I tried to push it down. Do I even want to go? UA was supposed to be the dream. Our dream. But now it just feels like a promise made to a ghost. The silence in the room was thick, pressing into my chest like gravity turned up too high. Everything felt heavier these days, my thoughts, my body, the air. And no matter how long I lay there, I couldn't tell if the ache in my chest was guilt, grief, or just the echo of everything I'd lost. I kept thinking about how we had to go to a funeral this week. I didn't know if I had the strength to stand there and witness Izuku's funeral with my own eyes, to see a coffin where his smile used to be, to hear people speak about him in past tense like he wasn't the brightest part of my future. He wasn't just my best friend. He was so much more than that. He was my person, my partner in everything, the one constant in a world that never stopped shifting beneath my feet. He was the one I thought I'd grow old with, the one I pictured beside me through every milestone we dreamed about together. I didn't want to let him go. I didn't want to accept that his story had ended without me in the final chapter. He wasn't just a friend. He was the part of me I never thought I'd have to live without. I loved him more than anyone else. I thought that one day we could start a family. A small one with just us and a kid. We didn't care about how we'd have to adopt, we just wanted a kid. A small creature to hold. Wait, am I crying? Again? I feel like I'm being a burden and hurting everyone else because I'm crying too much. I feel like I can't live without him. He was someone I loved, and now I don't know who I am without Izuku. I loved him so very, very much, and now he's gone. My true love is gone. I don't know why I just processed this. Third person. Katsuki's eyes lingered on the tiny metal piece resting silently in the drawer, the cold, unforgiving blade that had become both his refuge and his curse. A part of him ached for that sharp sting, the cold bite of metal pressing against his skin, carving out a small but real piece of sensation in a world that had otherwise dulled into endless gray numbness. He thought, I need to feel that again. Not just the pain, but the release it promised, something tangible in the swirling chaos of his thoughts. It had become his ritual, his only anchor, Wake up, stare blankly at the flickering TV, let the blade meet his skin, and repeat. Each day blurring into the next, a cycle of emptiness and fleeting relief. Food no longer held meaning for him, eating felt like admitting weakness, and the shrinking weight on his frame was just another silent scream. He wasn't okay, not by any measure he could count. Slowly, almost automatically, he moved toward the bathroom connected to his room, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and desperate need. There, in the quiet stillness, he did it again, finding a small, painful way to remind himself he was still alive, even if just barely. After carefully bandaging his arm, Katsuki sank onto his bed like a man carrying the weight of the world, his body heavy, his spirit even heavier. The cold sheets offered no comfort, just a hollow space to disappear into. He reached for the remote and turned on the TV, letting the flickering images wash over him like a dull background hum. Hours passed, though time had lost all meaning. The noise filled the silence, but it couldn't fill the void inside him. Eventually, his fingers slipped, pressing the power button to shut the screen off, and the room fell into darkness once again. Days bled into one another, indistinguishable and empty. Each sunrise and sunset felt like a cruel joke, reminders that time marched on without him, without Izuku. The calendar on the wall was just a meaningless grid of numbers. Katsuki didn't care if he wasted another day lying still, trapped in this endless loop of nothingness. Food lost its appeal. Sometimes he forgot to eat altogether, not out of some twisted Diespillen, but because nothing tasted real anymore. The few times he forced himself to take a bite, the flavor was hollow, as if it belonged to a world he'd been locked out of. Even walks, once a simple escape or way to clear his mind, now felt pointless. The air outside was cold, harsh, and distant, nothing like the warmth he craved. He longed for the familiar comfort of Izuku's presence, the soft warmth of his touch, the way his smile could light up the darkest days. He wanted to feel that again. He wanted to be happy. But happiness had become an unreachable ghost, a flicker of memory slipping further from his grasp with every breath. He loved Izuku more than words could hold, a love that had quietly grown beneath the surface, steady and true. But now, with him gone, that love felt like a wound that refused to heal. And Katsuki didn't know what else to do. Hurting himself was the only thing that made the crushing weight inside bearable for a moment. Sleep was the only escape from the storm of his thoughts. He curled into himself, the quiet emptiness surrounding him like a shroud, and wished desperately for just one more moment, one more touch, one more sign that the person he'd lost was still somehow there. But the silence answered back, cold and unyielding. Time skipped to the funeral. Katsuki was sleeping for the first time in a week and suddenly got waken up by his mom. "Kats, it's time to wake up." I don't want to go to his funeral. I can't face it. I don't wanna see him like that, laying there, cold and silent, in a coffin. It's not right. It's not him. I don't want to say goodbye like that. I know, sweetheart, you just have to try. But I don't want to. Katsuki mumbled out. "You're gonna have to be there for high dash." Katsuki cuts her off. "No. I'm sorry, I can't handle this. Why, you think I'm just gonna be fine, just okay seeing my Izuku dead? Like it's something I can just swallow and move on from?" Katsuki's voice cracked and then exploded, the pain and frustration breaking through his carefully held walls. Before he could stop himself, a sudden burst of his quirk flared uncontrollably, blasting a shockwave right in front of him. The force slammed into his mom's face, knocking her backward. "Mom!" Katsuki's eyes widened in horror as she stumbled toward the bathroom, clutching her cheek where a red, angry mark had already begun to bloom. He hadn't meant to hurt her, never her. Panic and guilt crashed over him in waves. Her soft footsteps retreating behind the door were the only sound as she tried to catch her breath, calm herself, and soothe the burning pain. Katsuki stood frozen for a moment, trembling. The weight of what he'd done settled like a stone in his chest. Then the tears came, soft at first, like whispered regrets, but quickly they spilled over, becoming desperate, uncontrollable sobs. His whole body shook as he dropped to his knees, clutching at the floor as if it might hold him together. "Sorry, Ma. I love you," he whispered between gasps, voice breaking with raw sorrow. I'm so sorry, you didn't deserve this. You didn't deserve to get hurt because of me. His sobs grew louder, each one filled with regret and helplessness. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I don't know what to do without him. I'm so lost and it's tearing me apart. The sharp sting on her cheek throbbed beneath her fingers as she leaned against the bathroom sink, trying to steady her breathing. The sudden blast from Katsuki's quirk had caught her completely off guard, and the sting was nothing compared to the ache twisting her heart. She heard his desperate sobs through the door, broken, raw, full of guilt, and it tore something inside her. He didn't mean it, she told herself firmly, wiping a tear that had escaped down her own cheek. He's hurting so badly. He's lost, just like we all are. She pressed her palm gently to her face, willing the pain to dull as her mind raced. Her son was unraveling before her eyes, a boy she barely recognized anymore. The weight of Izuku's death was crushing him, and now his own power, uncontrolled and desperate, had hurt the one person who loved him most. Softly, she called through the door, her voice trembling but steady. Katsuki, it's okay. I know you're hurting. I'm not angry. You're not alone in this. She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat, then added, but please, try to be careful. I can't help you if you're hurting yourself or me. Her heart ached for him, for the son who once held such fierce strength and fire. Now that fire was flickering, fragile and afraid. She knew the road ahead would be long and dark, but she promised herself she would walk it with him every painful step of the way. We're going to Inko's before we leave to actually go to the funeral home. Sweetheart, get your outfit on. We're leaving in a half hour. I love you, sweetheart, remember that. Katsuki hums instead of saying okay. At the Inko residence. Bakugo's POV. My mom knocks on the door and I just stay behind my parents, too scared to say anything. Inko answers the door in tears. She looks ready but terrible. She looks like she'd been crying for a while. She asks me if I'd like to go to Izuku's room. I accept the offer and run very fast to his room. When I saw the room, it made me think of how it looked the exact same as it did when we were kids. It hurt knowing this room has been untouched since Izuku had passed. I saw a note on the floor. It had my name in bold letters. My hands shaked as I opened the note. And as I read it, tears were falling. This was a letter he left before his suicide. There were ones. Labeled Mom. Auntie. Uncle. Is it possible Auntie didn't see this? The words Izuku left on my letter made me cry. I put it into my pocket and left the room. Bakugo's POV. I found something. My voice shook as I clutched the crumpled paper in my hand, heart pounding. I don't know how you're gonna take it, but they're notes. Izuku left them. Before everything happened. There was a pause. What do you mean, Katsuki? My mom asked softly. I looked down at the words I could barely read through the blur of my tears. I think these were his last words. Inko looked at me with quiet, trembling eyes before reaching out with shaking hands to take the letter addressed to her. As she unfolded the paper, her expression softened into something broken, something fragile and aching. Tears welled in her eyes almost instantly, shimmering before slipping silently down her cheeks. She didn't sob, not fully, maybe because she didn't want to fall apart in front of me. Maybe because some grief is too deep for sound. But I saw it. I felt it. That quiet kind of sorrow that wraps around your chest and squeezes until all you can do is breathe through it. Without thinking, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around my mom, just like I used to when I was small and scared. She held me tighter than I expected, her breath hitching softly against my shoulder. I knew she wanted to cry too. I could feel it in the way her hands gripped my back, like letting go would make it real. Inko's letter. Dear Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to begin writing this because I know it's going to hurt you more than I can explain. You gave me everything, your time, your love, your strength. And still, I couldn't carry mine. You were the first person to believe in me. Even when I didn't have a quirk, you looked at me like I could still be something, someone. I wish I had believed it too. I wish I could have seen what you saw when you looked at me. But lately, everything has felt heavy. Like breathing is something I have to remember how to do. Like I'm walking through life with shoes full of water. And no matter how many times I told myself to hang on for you, for Kaken, For everyone I just couldn't anymore. And I know that hurts. And I hate that I'm the one who's going to leave that pain behind. Please don't blame yourself. This wasn't because you didn't love me enough. You did. You loved me more than anyone ever has. And that's what makes this harder. I hope someday you'll remember me smiling and not in pain. I hope you'll find peace in the quiet moments and know that I'm not in pain anymore. I love you more than these words can hold. Forever your son, Izuku. Katsuki's letter. Dear Kat. If you're reading this, then I guess I couldn't hold on anymore. I don't even know how to start this, because I've written it in my head 1,000 times and still none of the words feel right. You were everything to me, Kaken. My best friend. My partner. The person I loved more than anything in this world. I hope you know that. I need you to know that. I'm sorry for leaving you. For not being strong enough to stay. I wanted to be more than anything. But the weight got too heavy. The voices in my head were too loud. And I didn't want to keep dragging my pain into the future we talked about like it wouldn't follow me there. I was scared to tell you how bad it really was. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I did. You always saw me for who I was, even when I was too tired to pretend. I didn't want to put that darkness in your hands too. You've carried so much already, and I couldn't bear the thought of adding more. But I need you to know this. You weren't the reason I left. You were the reason I stayed as long as I did. The late night calls. Your stupid little smirks. The way you always made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I was worth something. You gave me more light than you'll ever understand. I only wish I could have been strong enough to keep it. Please don't hate me. Please don't blame yourself. You loved me in a way no one else ever did, and I died knowing that kind of love. Live, Kaken. For both of us. Be the hero we always dreamed about. And when it gets hard, and I know it will, look up. I'll be there. I always will be. I love you. Always have. I'm sorry. Izuku. Bakugo's POV. Katsuki's fingers trembled as he unfolded the letter, his name scrawled in Izuku's familiar handwriting like a whisper from a life that felt 1,000 miles away. He read the first line and his heart cracked. By the second, his breath caught in his throat. And by the end, the paper was soaked in tears he didn't even realize had started falling. No, he choked out, barely able to speak. No, no, no. His knees gave out, and he collapsed to the floor with the letter clutched against his chest like it was the last piece of Izuku he'd ever have. His sobs came in waves, violent, breathless, unrelenting. He tried to speak, to say something, but the words got swallowed by the grief tightening around his throat. You idiot, he gasped through his crying. Why? I loved you too, do you mean it? You didn't have to go. I would have carried it, I would have carried you. The silence in the room was deafening, suffocating, as if the world had stopped spinning the moment Izuku's voice faded from the paper. I would have stayed up all night, Katsuki whispered brokenly. I would have fought every demon in your head if you let me. You didn't have to do this alone. He curled in on himself, the letter still pressed to his heart, and began to repeat the words that burned like fire in his throat. The sound of sobbing echoed through the walls like something primal, something too broken to belong to her son. Mitsuki didn't hesitate. She burst through his door without knocking, heart already in her throat. She wasn't prepared for what she saw. Katsuki was on the floor, curled around a letter like it was the last warm thing in the world. His shoulders shook violently, his knuckles white from how tightly he held the paper to his chest. He didn't look up. He didn't even notice she was there. Katsuki, she whispered, voice cracking as she stepped closer. He didn't respond, not with words. Just another choked-out sob and a half-spoken apology. I couldn't save him, Mum. He was right there and I couldn't, he didn't tell me, and I didn't see it. Mitsuki dropped to her knees beside him and wrapped her arms around his trembling body. She didn't say it would be okay. Because it wouldn't. Not for a long time. Maybe not ever. But she held him anyway. You loved him, she whispered, resting her chin on top of his head. You loved him more than most people ever get to love anyone in a lifetime. Katsuki's sobs hitched into gasps, every word between them carved from the same aching grief. I just wanted to make him happy. I didn't know he was in that much pain. I didn't know he was breaking right in front of me. Mitsuki pressed her hand to his back, grounding him. None of us knew. None of us did. But that doesn't mean you failed him. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just cried harder, until his voice was hoarse and his hands trembled against the floorboards. Mitsuki didn't let go. Because she couldn't take the pain away. But she could sit in it with him. And sometimes that's all love has left to give. Time skipped to the funeral. The sky was gray. Of course it was. The kind of gray that settles heavy in your lungs like smoke. Everything felt muted colors, sound, the way people looked at each other without really seeing. The seats were filled with familiar faces, but they blurred together in Katsuki's eyes. Teachers, classmates, neighbors, all dressed in black. All too quiet. At the front of the room was the thing Katsuki had been dreading for days. The casket. Polished. Too small. Too final. He sat between his mom and Izuku's aunt, hands clenched tightly in his lap, trying to stop them from shaking. Inko hadn't spoken much since the letters. She sat still as stone beside the casket, holding a folded green hoodie in her lap like it was the only part of her son left that felt real. Someone said some words at the front of the room. Something about Izuku being bright, kind, gifted. Katsuki couldn't hear it. His ears buzzed with a high-pitched pressure, like the world was holding its breath. Then his name was called. Katsuki, if you'd like to say something? His legs moved before he told them to. His feet felt like they were carrying weights. And when he stood behind the podium, looking out at all those solemn faces, he didn't know where to start. So he spoke from the only place he could. I don't know how to do this, Katsuki said, voice raw, barely above a whisper. I don't know how to say goodbye to someone who was supposed to be in my forever. He looked at the casket. His throat tightened. Izuku wasn't just my friend. He wasn't just some classmate or some kid with big dreams. He was my person. He was the one who saw me when I didn't want to be seen. The one who stuck around even when I was a mess. Even when I didn't deserve it. The pause. His hands gripped the edge of the podium. He wanted to save everyone. Even if it broke him. And I hate that. I didn't see how close to the edge he was. I hate that I thought he'd always be here, always smiling, always Izuku. His voice cracked. I would have carried every ounce of that pain for him. I would have fought off every dark thought. I didn't get the chance. His breath hitched as he looked down at his trembling hands. I loved him. And I never got to say it out loud. Not the way he deserved to hear it. Katsuki turned toward the casket then. And for a moment, it felt like it was just the two of them. I hope you know now. I hope you feel it wherever you are. I hope you finally feel peace. He stepped back, tears falling freely now, no longer trying to hide them. I love you, Izuku. I always will. Perhaps. Katsuki walked off the stage, barely able to breathe. But as he sat down, his mother silently took his hand. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Katsuki let someone hold a little of his pain. The sky outside stayed gray. But somehow, the silence felt a little less lonely. Bakugo's POV. The funeral was over. The chairs had been folded, the soft murmur of voices faded, and the fresh earth above the grave sat still under a blanket of dimming light. But Katsuki stayed behind. The cemetery was quiet now. No more condolences. No more speeches. Just the rustle of wind through the trees and the sharp chill of approaching nightfall. He stood in front of the gravestone, hands in his pockets, eyes red-rimmed and tired. Midoriya Izuku. 2005 to 2024. You were enough. Katsuki scoffed bitterly under his breath at the quote Inko had chosen. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was. And Izuku never believed it. I shouldn't be here, he said quietly, kneeling down in front of the headstone. You should be yelling at me about my dumb tie or dragging me to get shitty soba or laughing too loud in that stupid, contagious way. He reached out and traced the letters of Izuku's name with a trembling hand. You were supposed to make it. You were supposed to be a hero. You were supposed to live. His voice cracked on the last word. He dropped his head, pressing his forehead to the stone like he was trying to get close one last time. Tears slipped down his face again, warm and unwelcome. I should have seen it. I should have listened more. I should have been better to you, from the very beginning. The wind picked up gently, brushing through the trees like a breath on his skin. Katsuki closed his eyes and whispered, "I miss you, De. I miss your stupid rambling. I miss your hands. I miss your hugs. I miss the way you looked at me like I was worth something, even when I didn't believe it myself." He pulled a folded photo from his jacket, a picture of them laughing in the park, faces pressed together, sunlight bouncing off Izuku's hair. He placed it gently at the foot of the grave, smoothing it out. "You were enough," he repeated, voice almost a breath. "You were more than enough. And I'm gonna keep saying it until the universe hears me." Katsuki sat there until the sky turned to navy, until the stars blinked awake overhead, until the cold settled into his bones. Even then he didn't move. Because some part of him still didn't want to say goodbye. My parents came to get me after I finished speaking. Their faces were somber, tired, as if they were carrying their own weight of grief and didn't quite know how to carry mine. I barely looked at them. Instead, I shoved my hands into my pockets, grabbed my AirPods, and shoved them in like they were the only lifeline I had left. Music was one of the few places where the world faded away, where I could pretend the noise outside wasn't crushing me. I hit play, and the haunting notes of motion sickness filled my ears, each lyric sinking into my chest like a cold wave I couldn't escape. "I hate you for what you did." The words looped endlessly, a bitter echo bouncing inside my mind. "Now I miss you like a little kid." It wasn't just anger anymore. It was confusion, sadness, regret. Feelings I wasn't ready to face, so I buried them beneath layers of numbness. I faked it every time, but that's all right. Because maybe pretending was easier than admitting how hollow I felt. Maybe pretending was the only way to survive. I hardly feel anything. I hardly feel anything at all. The lyrics matched what I wanted to scream but couldn't. My emotions churned inside me like a storm, but my face stayed still, cold. I have emotional motion sickness. Somebody roll the windows down. I imagined opening a window and letting the pain rush out, carried away on the wind. But the suffocating silence inside me stayed. There are no words in the English language I could scream to drown you out. No words, no noise, no distraction could silence the ache Izuku left behind. The grief was a shadow I carried everywhere, and even music, my escape, only made it sharper. As I walked away, headphones on, the world blurred around me. I was trapped in a loop of memories and heartbreak, lost between the person I used to be and the emptiness I was trying to fill. My footsteps echoed against the pavement, but inside, everything was numb, like my body was moving, but my mind was still stuck in that moment, tangled in memories of Izuku's smile and the silence that followed his absence. The music played on, but it felt like I was trapped beneath the surface of a stormy sea, drowning in thoughts I couldn't reach. Behind me, I could hear my parents' footsteps, steady, hesitant. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. Their silence was louder than any conversation, filled with the same helplessness I felt, the same aching sorrow that no words could fix. I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream, to break the silence, to tell them how much I hated feeling like this. But all I could do was breathe shallowly and keep walking. Mom reached out, lightly brushing her hand against my shoulder, a quiet reminder that I wasn't completely alone. Dad's eyes were fixed ahead, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he fought to stay strong, not just for me, but for himself. We moved forward together, bound by grief and silence, each of us carrying pieces of a pain too heavy to bear alone. The quiet between us stretched, thick and heavy, like a fog settling over every step we took. My parents walked beside me, but it felt like I was carrying the weight of the world all alone. Their presence was a reminder of what I'd lost and what none of us knew how to fix. I stared straight ahead, the cracked pavement beneath my shoes grounding me, even as my mind spun in endless circles. The air was cold, but inside me, something colder had taken hold, a hollow ache that no warmth could touch. With every breath, I felt the weight settle deeper into my chest, pressing harder, making it difficult to think, to feel anything other than this unbearable void. The music pulsed quietly in my ears, a fragile lifeline to keep me tethered to some part of myself. But even that was starting to fade. Somewhere, in the silence I was wrapped in, I knew the road ahead would be long and lonely. And for now, I wasn't ready to take a single step forward. Time skip a week into UA, a month after Izuku's death. He spent most of his days moving through the motions, attending classes, training sessions, and practice drills without really being there. His eyes were often glazed over, fixed somewhere beyond the classroom walls, lost in memories he couldn't escape. The laughter and camaraderie around him only reminded him of the silence Izuku's absence left behind. Every glance from a classmate felt like a question he didn't want to answer, every friendly smile a reminder of a connection he no longer felt worthy of. At night, when the dorm lights dimmed and the halls grew quiet, Katsuki wrestled with the emptiness that gnawed at his chest. He longed for something to break through the numbness, to feel something again, even if it was pain. But for now, he wrapped himself in solitude, holding tightly to the ghost of a friendship that still haunted him. I woke up in my dorm, just like I had the past few days, not rested, not refreshed, just awake. My eyes opened to the same sterile ceiling, the same soft hum of the morning outside my window. For a moment, I just laid there, staring blankly at the cracks of sunlight sneaking in through the blinds. The room was still, too still. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. Another day at UA. Another day pretending like I belonged here. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days outside of answering teachers with tired nods or mumbled, "Yes, certus." My meals were taken alone, my training done in silence, and I hadn't even glanced at my classmates long enough to remember half their names. And maybe that was fair. What right did I have to be seen? What was left of me for anyone to want? Then I heard it, a soft knock on the door. At first, I thought I imagined it. Who the hell would knock on my door? I wasn't exactly known for being approachable. And lately, I hadn't been anything but a walking shadow. Still, it came again. 3 quiet taps. Not urgent. Almost hesitant. My chest tightened. I didn't move right away. Just lay there, staring at the door like it was some unfamiliar threat. Part of me wanted to stay under the covers, to let the moment pass, to stay hidden. I didn't deserve someone checking in on me. I didn't deserve kindness. Not after everything. Who would want to talk to me? Who would care? A whisper of a thought surfaced, cruel and heavy. I'm not worthy of having a friend. Not anymore. I couldn't even protect the one who mattered most. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and sat up slowly, each movement feeling like I was peeling myself off the floor of the ocean. My limbs were heavy, like my body hadn't forgotten the grief even if my brain tried to push it aside. I rubbed my face with my hands, trying to look even remotely presentable, not because I cared, but because I didn't want anyone to see how far I'd unraveled. The knock still echoed in my head. Someone had come. Someone was there. And I didn't know if I could face them, but I also didn't know if I had it in me to keep hiding forever. So I stood up. Wobbly, uncertain. Walked slowly to the door like I was carrying the weight of everything I never said to Izuku on my back. My hand hovered over the doorknob. And still, the same thought repeated in my head like a curse. Why would anyone want to see me, when he's not here to see me anymore? The hallway outside my dorm was quiet, too quiet, as I hesitated with my hands still on the doorknob. My pulse thrummed in my ears. Part of me hoped no one would be standing there anymore, that they'd given up and walked away. But when I opened the door, there he was. Kirishima. Hair wild as ever, hoodie loose around his shoulders, eyes softer than I remembered. He wasn't smiling like he usually did, his expression was hesitant, careful. Like he was trying not to startle me. Or like he already knew I was made of shattered glass underneath all the silence. "Hey, Baku bro," he said, voice light but not forced. Not overly cheerful, just steady. I blinked at him, too stunned to speak. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly and gestured behind him with a nod. Me and the class were gonna go to the mall for a bit. Thought maybe you'd want to tag along. Get out of here. Clear your head." Silence. It stretched too long. I didn't even know how to respond. I looked down at his shoes instead of his face, guilt flaring in my chest like a warning. My first instinct was to say no. To shut the door and disappear again. To go back to the stillness where it was safe to feel nothing. But he stood there anyway. Not pressuring me. Not pretending everything was normal. Just waiting. with patience I didn't think I deserved. You don't have to, he added quietly, voice softer now. I just thought maybe it'd be good to not be alone. Just for a little while. I glanced up at him, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, someone looked at me like I was still human. Not broken. Not a project. I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything. I gripped the edge of the door tighter, jaw clenched. 1,000 things wanted to come out of my mouth. Thanks. I can't. I want to, but I can't breathe. He's gone. I don't know who I am anymore. But none of it made it past my lips. I stared at Kirishima, and he just stood there, waiting, not judging, not pitying. Just waiting. And maybe that made it worse. Because I couldn't deal with kindness right now. I didn't know how to accept it when everything inside me was splintered. When someone looked at me like I was worth saving, all it did was remind me that I hadn't saved him. That Izuku was gone, and I was still here, dragging around pieces of a heart that didn't work right anymore. I swallowed hard and looked away. I'm good, I muttered, voice flat, too quiet even for myself. Thanks, but no. The weight of those words landed between us like a closed door before the real one ever moved. Kirishima's smile faltered, just a flicker, and I hated how much it made my chest ache. But he didn't push. He didn't tell me I needed to try. He just nodded slowly. All right, he said, almost under his breath. If you change your mind, we'll be around. I gave the barest nod back, barely enough to count. Then I closed the door. It clicked shut too softly for how loud everything felt in my head. I stood there, frozen, hands still on the doorknob, the silence heavier than before. My chest burned with something I couldn't name. Anger. Guilt. Loneliness. All of it. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and pressed my palms to my face. I hated how close I'd come to opening up. I hated how much I wanted to go. And most of all, I hated how hard it was to let anyone see me like this. You wouldn't have shut the door, Izuku, I thought bitterly. You would have gone, and smiled, and made everyone feel better. But I wasn't Izuku. And I didn't know how to be anything without him. I don't know how long I stayed there, sitting on the cold floor with my back pressed against the door like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was screaming. It filled my ears with everything I'd tried not to think about. I curled my knees up to my chest and buried my face in my arms. The second I shut that door, I regretted it. I should have gone. I should have tried. I should have said something that wasn't, I'm good, when I was the furthest thing from it. Kirishima had offered me a lifeline, and I pushed it away because I was scared. Because I didn't want anyone to see what I was like now, hollow, bitter, fragile in ways I hated. My chest ached with something sharp and ugly. Grief clawed at me from the inside, leaving no space for air. And somewhere beneath all that pain was a quieter voice whispering, Izuku wouldn't want you to be like this. He'd want you to let people in. But I couldn't. Because letting anyone in meant they might see the parts of me that failed him. That maybe I let him slip away. I dragged myself up from the floor, eventually legs weak, eyes burning, and stumbled toward my desk. I pulled open the drawer and stared blankly at the notebook tucked in the corner. A plain one. The kind Izuku used to fill with notes and dreams and what-if-s about our futures. I opened to a blank page and grabbed a pen with shaking hands. And then I wrote. Not anything perfect. Not poetic. Just raw. You're still everywhere. In my dorm, in my head, in the silence. I keep looking up expecting to see you, expecting to hear you laugh or scold me for something stupid. I thought time was supposed to make it easier, but it's only making it more real. And I hate that. I hate how real it is now that you're gone. I hate that I'm starting to forget the way your voice sounded when you were happy. I hate that I'm the one who gets to keep breathing. My handwriting grew messier the more I wrote. Tears blurred the page. I didn't stop. I miss you, Dad. I miss you more than anything. And I'm so sorry. I stopped writing when I couldn't see anymore. The room was too quiet again. So I curled up on the bed, notebook still open beside me, the pages stained with ink and salt. I stared at the ceiling, letting the grief settle in my bones like it belonged there. Because right now it did. And I didn't know if it would ever leave. I sank down onto my bed, the weight of everything crashing down on me like a tidal wave. My chest heaved uncontrollably as sobs racked my body, each one tearing at the fragile pieces of what was left inside. I didn't know if I was crying because I was broken, or because I was trying to hold on to anything that might still exist beneath the crushing emptiness. My mind spun in a dark whirlpool, and through the haze of grief, one terrifying thought kept rising up. Maybe leaving this planet, this life, was the only way to find peace. Maybe the silence that followed death was the only kind of quiet that could drown out the storm inside me. I didn't know what else to do. Nothing made sense anymore. Nothing felt real. I just sobbed deep, shuddering sobs that echoed off the cold walls of my room, loud enough that I was sure anyone outside could hear the raw pain pouring out of me. It was like my body was trying to scream the pieces of my soul that had fractured beyond repair. The tears blurred my vision, and every breath burned like fire in my lungs. In the middle of it all, a hollow, desperate need grew inside me, a need to feel something again, even if it was pain. I couldn't stand the numbness, the way my heart felt like a frozen wasteland. My eyes drifted to the sharp metal piece resting on my desk, glinting under the dim light. It called to me in a way nothing else did. I thought about getting a backup one because maybe one wasn't enough anymore. Maybe I needed more than just one escape from the void that swallowed me whole. But before I could even let that idea take root, something unspoken drove me to my feet. I ran, stumbling through the hallway to the bathroom, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might shatter my ribs. My hands shook as I grabbed the metal piece, cold and unyielding against my skin. Over and over, I pressed it down, each sting cutting through the fog of emptiness like a cruel reminder that I was still alive. The sharp bite brought a strange kind of relief, the only relief I could grasp right now. It hurt, yes, but at least it meant I was still feeling something. The pain was raw and real. It was proof that beneath the numbness, beneath the guilt and the sorrow, there was still a part of me that could respond, that could fight back, even if only in this broken way. And for a moment, just a fleeting, fragile moment, I thought maybe, somehow, that was enough. After the sharp, biting pain finally settled into a dull throb, I sank down onto the cold bathroom floor, my breathing ragged and uneven. My hands trembled as I reached for the small first aid kit I kept tucked away, a quiet reminder of all the times I tried to hold myself together. I peeled the sterile bandages with slow, careful fingers, wiping away the faint traces of blood that had pooled on my skin. Every movement felt heavy, like dragging myself through molasses, but I wrapped the gauze tightly around my arm, pressing just enough to dull the sting without cutting off feeling completely. The mirror caught my eye as I finished, reflecting back a face I barely recognized, pale, exhausted, eyes rimmed red. From too much crying. I didn't bother to hide the fresh cuts. They were part of me now, visible reminders of the storm inside. With a final shaky breath, I pushed myself up, every muscle protesting, and made my way back to my room. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the quiet sounds of the hallway. I sat on the edge of my bed, the bandaged arm resting heavily in my lap, heart pounding in my chest like a warning. The silence was suffocating. I wanted to crawl under the blankets and disappear, but the weight inside me refused to let go. Then a soft, hesitant knock on the door. My breath hitched. "Bakugu." The voice was low, calm, familiar. It was Aizawa. Mina said she heard sobbing. "Are you okay?" I froze, the knot in my chest tightening. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want anyone to know. But Aizawa's voice was patient, steady, and there was no hiding the truth, not from him. I swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm fine." Another knock, gentler this time. "If you want to talk, or if you need anything, I'm here," he said quietly. "No pressure. Just don't shut yourself off." I didn't say anything. But inside, something shifted, a small, fragile thread of connection, pulling me back from the edge. Maybe it wasn't time to be completely alone after all. I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the blanket at the edge of my bed. The silence stretched between us like a fragile thread, and for once, I didn't have the strength to cut it. "Yeah, thanks," I finally muttered, voice rough and low. It wasn't much, barely a reply, but it was something. An acknowledgement that I heard him. that maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. I kept my eyes on the floor, not wanting to meet his gaze. Pride and shame warred inside me, twisting my throat tight. Part of me wanted to push him away, wanted to retreat back into the silence where I didn't have to explain or pretend. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, wanted to let someone in. Wanted to let someone see the pieces I was struggling to hold together. Aizawa's footsteps shifted, and I heard him settle down just outside the door, giving me space but letting me know he was still there. "Whenever you're ready," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." I swallowed again, heart pounding, and the weight inside me felt just a little lighter. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, but something in Aizawa's quiet presence kept me rooted to the spot. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat refusing to budge. Finally, the words I'd been holding back spilled out, rough and jagged, like shards of glass scraping across my tongue. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered, voice barely more than a broken breath. How to be okay when everything inside me's torn apart. When the person I trusted the most, when he's gone, there's this hole. This endless nothing. And it's like I'm drowning in it. I can't breathe, can't think, can't even feel right anymore. My hands clenched into fists, knuckles white against the blanket. I keep thinking maybe it's my fault. Maybe if I'd done more, said more, if I was better, he'd still be here. But I'm not. I'm broken. I'm empty. I looked up then, eyes glistening with unshed tears, raw and haunted. I'm so tired of pretending. Tired of the silence, the numbness. I want to scream, to cry, to break. But all I do is nothing. Just exist. And it hurts. It hurts so much that I don't know if I can carry this weight anymore. The words hung heavy in the air, a confession soaked in grief and desperation. I don't want to be alone. But I don't know how to ask for help. I don't even know if I deserve it. Another long pause. My voice cracked, the walls I'd built crumbling just a little. I'm scared too. Scared that if I let anyone in, the pieces I've tried to hold together will shatter completely. I closed my eyes, fighting to hold back the flood. But maybe I'm ready. Maybe I'm tired of carrying this weight by myself. A quiet breath. A small flicker of hope, fragile and flickering, but there. Katsuki, it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to be broken. You don't have to carry all of this alone. You're not weak for struggling. You're human. He sighed softly. What you're feeling, the pain, the guilt, the fear, that's real. And it's heavy. But carrying it alone only makes it heavier. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to pretend to be okay. I'm here to help you, whether you want to talk or just sit in silence. You've been strong through a lot, but even the strongest people need support sometimes. Aizawa's words were simple, but each one felt like a small bomb on the raw edges of Katsuki's heart. Take your time. When you're ready, I'll be right outside. Bakugo's POV. I sat there, staring into the dim light of my room, my arms still trembling, heart aching with something deeper than pain. I started really thinking about whether I needed help. Not just in passing, not just brushing it off like I always do. But in that gut-deep, soul-tired kind of way. The kind of wondering that makes your chest feel too tight and your skin too heavy to carry. Is it getting that bad? Or am I just being dramatic? Maybe it's not bad enough to say anything. Maybe I'm still functioning just enough to stay quiet, just enough to convince everyone I'm okay. Maybe I've gotten too good at lying. But then again, maybe it's worse than I want to admit. Can they tell I'm hurting? Or am I still that good at hiding it? I think I want to talk. I think I want anyone to notice that I'm slipping. To say my name in that way that means they see through me. Maybe Aizawa. He's quiet. He wouldn't judge. He's the kind of person who'd just sit there and listen. Not try to fix me, not force me to be okay. Just listen. But I'm terrified. Of saying too much. Of falling apart in front of someone and not knowing how to put myself back together. And the worst part is, I don't know if I want to stop hurting myself. Not yet. Because this pain is the only thing that makes sense right now. It's the only thing I still control. I don't know how to let it go when it's the one thing anchoring me to the world. And letting go would mean facing everything, the grief, the guilt, the rage, and I'm not sure I can survive that. I want someone to be here. But at the same time, I want to be alone. It's like screaming into a void and hoping no one hears, but also begging that someone does. I don't want my parents to know. They'd look at me like I was broken beyond repair. Like they'd failed. And maybe I have. I don't want to do it again. But I might. Because I'm tired. So tired. And the thought creeps in, what if dying really is better than this? What if that's the only way to make the noise stop? What if this is what I deserve? I wish I could believe I'm worth saving. But tonight, I'm not so sure. Am I see crying? Am I see crying? Are really see crying? The words barely made it past my lips, strangled and trembling, like even my voice wasn't sure it had the right to exist. My chest was tight burning and every breath felt like trying to breathe through water. My throat ached from holding it all in for too long, from swallowing down every scream and sob I told myself I wasn't allowed to let out. I didn't recognize the sound coming out of me, didn't recognize this shaking, gasping mess I'd become. I hadn't meant to fall apart. But something cracked. And once it started, I couldn't stop it. I blinked, and tears spilled down without permission, hot, fast, messy. And it hit me all at once. I was crying. Not the quiet kind. Not the holding it in kind. The broken kind. The kind that meant I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Am I see crying? Are really see crying? That's so pathetic of me. The words fell out like a secret I never meant to share. My breath hitched, chest caving in under the weight of it. My arms wrapped tight around my ribs like I could hold myself together with sheer force, but it was no use. I was unraveling one thought at a time. I stared at the floor, jaw trembling, and whispered to no one but the walls around me. After what I did to Izuku back when we were kids. It doesn't even compare. Nothing I've gone through comes close. Not to what he went through. My voice cracked on his name. He carried everything alone. And I made it worse. I was supposed to be his friend. His first friend. And I pushed him away. I called him useless. I told him he couldn't be a hero. A breath caught in my throat like it was made of glass. I heard him. Over and over. And he still smiled at me like I was worth something. I let out a shuddered breath, barely a sound. He went through more than I ever did. And I am still here, crying on my demon floor, cutting into my skin like it's gonna bring him back. Like it's gonna undo everything I said to him. The silence that followed was suffocating. But then, it was soft. Barely audible. Like whoever was on the other side didn't want to break me, just remind me they were there. But Aizawa's voice was gentle, but not pitying. Firm, but not cold. It had the weight of someone who's seen pain before and never once looked away from it. You're not alone. The pause. Not anymore. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My mouth opened, then closed, like my body had forgotten how to speak. But my heart heard him. And it beat just once, a little louder than the silence. My heart plummeted like a stone thrown into a dark, silent well. Did Aizawa hear me? Had I spoken out loud, in a voice that was never meant to escape the walls of my room? Panic clawed its way up my throat, suffocating and fierce. What if he told my parents? No, not yet. Please, not yet. I'm not ready. I don't want to change anything right now. All I want is to just be. To sit in this heavy, aching silence that's become my only companion. And then it was there, the word. That dreadful, haunting word, die. A fragile whisper, but it echoed in my mind like a storm. Did I really want to? Was it a desperate plea for peace, or just a ghost lingering in the corners of my thoughts, refusing to be chased away? I swallowed hard, my voice barely a breath as it escaped again, betraying me. I want to see Izuku, DMN it. Why couldn't I even keep that inside? Why was everything I said so loud and messy, like my mind was a tangled mess of broken strings? I wanted to be stronger. To be the kid who could make friends, who could laugh without feeling like the weight of the world was crushing his chest. But here I was, trapped in my own uselessness, spiraling deeper into the void. How the hell am I this broken? The question tore through me, relentless and raw. The answer was a whisper I couldn't bear to hear it. I'm eating, idiot. The words tore through me like jagged glass scraping bone. They echoed loudly inside my chest, a relentless drumbeat pounding the walls of my mind. I should have saved him. I should have done anything different. Maybe if I had been better. Maybe if I'd been stronger. Not just physically, but inside strong enough to stand up, to fight, to be the person he needed when everything was falling apart. Maybe if I had cared more. Not just cared but really cared. More than I ever let myself admit, more than the pride and anger and stupid bravado I wrapped myself in like armor. Maybe then he'd still be here. Maybe he wouldn't have been swallowed by that darkness that swallowed him whole. Maybe his smile would still be alive in this world, laughing at my stupid jokes, sharing those dumb dreams about heroes and the future. But no, none of that happened. Because I wasn't enough. Because I was too busy pushing him away, too blind to see the cracks in his soul, too scared to say the words that could have saved us both. And now he's gone. Gone. The weight of that word crushed me, suffocating me. The truth I'd tried to bury under layers of silence and pain was screaming out I failed him. I shook my head, trying to make the thoughts stop, trying to shove the noise back inside. But they spilled out, uncontrollable. Wait, what the hell? Did I just shout? My voice cracked, raw and ragged, echoing off the empty walls. Why can't I keep anything inside my head? Why do I have to scream it into the silence like I want the whole demon world to hear how broken I am? The tears came then hot, unrelenting. The kind of tears that burn your skin and leave you raw long after they've dried. And I let myself fall apart because maybe, just maybe, that was all I had left. I sank to the floor, my knees folding beneath me like they could no longer hold the weight of my own despair. My hands trembled, clutching at the air as if trying to grasp anything that could steady the storm raging inside. But there was nothing. Only the hollow ache of failure, the unbearable loneliness that pressed down like 1,000 invisible hands crushing my chest. Every breath was a struggle, shallow and ragged, as if the air itself had turned to shards that cut through my lungs. The room felt too small, too cold to suffocating like the walls were closing in, whispering cruel reminders of what I had lost and what I could never take back. I wanted to scream, to shout until my voice broke and the pain spilled out of me in waves, but all that came were shaky, broken sobs. Quiet at first, then louder echoing off the walls, filling the empty space with the sound of a heart shattering into 1,000,000 pieces. My mind spiraled memories of Izuku's smile, the times I pushed him away, the words I never said all tangled together in a cruel knot of guilt and regret. I reached for the only thing I knew to quiet the storm, the cold bite of the sharp metal pressing against my skin. It was a desperate attempt to feel something real, something tangible, anything but this unbearable emptiness. And as the pain blossomed, sharp and alive, it was the only thing that reminded me I was still here, that I still existed. But even that felt hollow. Because no matter how much I hurt, no matter how deep the wounds I carried, the one thing I couldn't fix was the truth that Izuku was gone. And I was still alone. The door creaked slightly under the soft push of a hand Aizawa's, cautious and patient. My breath hitched. For a long moment, I didn't move. The silence stretched, heavy and thick. Then, hesitantly, I shifted. My fingers trembling, I slid the door open just enough to peek out. My eyes, swollen and rimmed red, met his calm gaze. "I'm fine," I whispered, voice cracking like fragile glass. But the lie didn't hold. The weight behind those words felt too heavy, too raw to be true. Aizawa didn't say anything right away. He simply nodded, stepping closer, offering no judgment, only presence. I don't know what to do," I admitted, the words catching in my throat. "It's like this dark hole inside me. And no matter what I do, it doesn't get smaller." His eyes softened. "You don't have to do this alone, Bakugo. It's okay to not be okay." For the first time in what felt like forever, I let a small breath escape, less a surrender and more a fragile hope. Maybe this was the start. Not a fix, not a cure, but a first step toward being seen. Bakugo's POV. I slowly slipped my sweater over my shoulders, each movement heavy with the weight of the moment ahead. Tonight, I was going to visit Izuku's grave. I had bought flowers the weekend I stayed at my parents' house, simple blooms, but ones I hoped would carry the words I couldn't say aloud. I was going to place them there, at the place where his name is carved in stone, a final resting spot that still felt unreal. Saying his grave out loud twisted something deep inside me, a fresh, jagged ache I wasn't ready to face. Speaking of him in the past tense felt like tearing open a wound I never wanted to touch. I lingered in those painful thoughts a moment longer before shaking myself free. I needed to keep moving. Slowly, I slipped on my favorite sweatpants, the fabric soft and worn, a small comfort amid the storm inside me. I told Aizawa I needed to go see someone, hoping he would believe me, hoping he wouldn't ask too many questions. I just needed a break. I just needed to be near Izuku, to feel his presence again, even if only for a fleeting second. Maybe for an hour. Maybe longer. Because sometimes, when everything else feels unbearable, the only thing that can hold you together is the memory of someone you loved so fiercely, even after they're gone. I slipped on my AirPods, ready for the car ride that was probably gonna be hard. Aizawa was driving me, ready to take me to the graveyard. On the way there, I slipped in my AirPods, needing something to fill the silence, not with noise, but with something that understood the ache that had rooted itself deep in my chest. I didn't want voices. I didn't want advice. I just wanted someone, even if only through a melody, to feel what I felt. I scrolled through my playlist and settled on someone familiar, not just a favorite artist, but a voice that had carried me through more sleepless nights than I could count. Mitsuki. The song I chose wasn't a new one, but it always knew how to find me in the exact place I was breaking. I pressed play on Francis Forever, and immediately, the opening line unraveled something inside me. I don't know what to do without you. Those words hit harder than they should have. My throat tightened. My fingers curled in my lap. I don't know where to put my hands. It was like she had pulled the thoughts straight from my chest, stripped the confusion and hollowness bare. I didn't know what to do without him either. I didn't know where to put the grief, where to tuck away the sadness, where to store all the versions of us that would never get to grow. The wind outside whispered as the next line played softly. I've been trying to lay my head down, but I'm writing this at 3 a.m. I glanced out the window, Izuku's flowers resting on the seat beside me, gently swaying with the movement of the car. He always used to stay up too late. I remembered texting him past midnight, laughing about the dumbest things. And now I was the one awake at 3 a.m., not laughing, just surviving. I don't need the world to see that I've been the best I can be. Tears blurred my vision, then quiet, warm, and unwanted. I wasn't the best I could be. I hadn't even come close. But the song kept playing, echoing truths I couldn't say out loud, and I let it. I let it break me in the softest way because I was tired of breaking hard. I didn't skip the song. I let it finish. And when it ended, I replayed it. Over and over. Because somehow, it felt like the only thing in the world that saw me, even if Izuku no longer could. We pulled into the cemetery just as the sun began to dip behind a sheet of gray clouds. The light, dim and washed out, stretched over the graves like a thin veil, not quite darkness, but nowhere near warmth. The car came to a slow stop, gravel crunching beneath the tires like the quiet crack of bones under strain. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Aizawa sat silently beside me in the driver's seat, his gaze fixed forward, steady, the kind of silence that understood, that didn't press. With a breath I wasn't ready to take, I opened the door. The air hit colder than I expected. It slipped into my lungs like glass and I shivered, though I wasn't sure if it was from the wind or the ache inside me. My footsteps were slow, weighted, like each one might break the earth beneath me. And then I saw it. Tucked between other names, other lives once lived, was the one name that still felt like it shouldn't be. Izuku Midoriya. Etched into stone. So permanent. So final. The letters looked clean, sharp as if carved just yesterday, though the pain it caused had already aged into something ancient in my chest. I moved closer, every breath getting harder, like the air around his grave didn't want to be shared with the living. I fell to my knees before the stone, my hands trembling as I reached out and touched the cold granite. It was real. Too real. I hadn't imagined this. I couldn't wake up from it. Aizawa stayed in the car, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't follow. He knew this wasn't a moment to interrupt. And I broke. I sobbed, the kind of sobs that didn't ask for permission, the kind that clawed their way out of my chest like something wild and desperate. I hugged the tiny gravestone like it was the only thing tethering me to the earth, pressing my face against it as though stone could remember warmth. "Izuku," I whispered. My voice cracked. I'm so sorry I wasn't enough." The flowers I brought slid from my grip, forgotten for a moment as I clung tighter to the grave. My tears stained the stone, the petals, my hands. I didn't care. Because in that moment, it felt like I was holding him. Like if I held on tight enough, the earth might reverse, time might fold, and I'd get one last chance. One more smile. One more kiss. One more moment to say, "I love you. I miss you. Please come back." But he didn't. And I stayed there in the silence, sobbing into stone, surrounded by nothing but names and unfinished stories. He stayed on his knees for a long time, tears soaking the ground, his voice caught in the hollow of his throat. But eventually, Katsuki found the words, or maybe they found him. He reached out, brushing his fingers over the engraved name like he was touching Izuku's cheek. And then, through a cracked whisper, he began to speak. "I don't even know where to start, Deku." A shaky breath. He swallows the lump forming in his throat. "I still call you that, you know? That." It slips out. Like habit. Like you're still here. Like I can just turn around and you'll be standing there, looking at me like I'm something more than a mess. His fingers curl tightly around the edge of the grave. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so goddamn sorry. For all of it. For the words I threw at you when we were kids. For not seeing it. For not being enough. For not saving you." The wind picks up, brushing his hair into his eyes. He doesn't move it. "You were everything. You idiot. You were everything. My best friend, my partner, the person I thought I'd grow old with. I thought we had time. I thought we were stronger than this world." He presses his forehead to the stone, his voice barely above a breath. "I miss you. I miss you so much it hurts to breathe. It hurts to wake up, to sleep, to eat, to smile. I'd give anything, Izuku, just to hear your laugh again. Just to hear you call me Kaken, like it meant something." Silence. Then, barely audible. "I don't know how to live in a world where you don't exist." He lets out a quiet, broken sound, something between a cry and a laugh. "You were the light and I was just chasing after it, pretending I was strong. But you were the one who was always stronger. You carried so much and never let it show. I hate that I didn't see it. I hate that you didn't tell me. I hate that I wasn't enough." His voice cracks hard on the last word. "I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to stay. But it's hard. Everything's so heavy without you. Everything's so. But I hear your voice in every song. I see you in the empty seats, in my dreams, in the spaces between seconds." Another pause. "Please forgive me. Please don't hate me for still being here." His voice falls to a whisper. "I love you, Izuku. I never stopped. I never will." And with that, Katsuki lays the flowers down gently against the headstone like he's putting something fragile to rest. Then he sits beside the grave in silence, letting the ache bloom fully inside him, where no one else can see. He stayed on his knees for a long time, tears soaking the ground, his voice caught in the hollow of his throat. But eventually, Katsuki found the words, or maybe they found him. He reached out, brushing his fingers over the engraved name like he was touching his cheek. Katsuki sat in silence for what felt like hours, the wind weaving through the trees like a whisper, gentle, mournful, like the world was mourning with him. The grave beside him was quiet, still, but the weight of it pressed down on his chest like 1,000 bricks. His fingertips brushed the edge of the stone once more, unwilling to let go. "Please don't disappear," he thought. "Please just stay a little longer." But stone is not skin. And silence is not love. Eventually, his limbs began to ache from the cold, and his throat burned from crying. He rose slowly, knees stiff, heart heavier than when he arrived. He looked down one last time at the flowers. He'd brought a soft apology. He could never speak when it mattered. As he turned and walked back toward the car, He saw Aizawa standing outside it now. The man hadn't waited inside, he stood there quietly, watching Katsuki approach with an unreadable expression, eyes shadowed and tired, but steady. Katsuki didn't say anything as he reached the car. He didn't have to. His tear-streaked face and red, puffy eyes said enough. Aizawa opened the door for him without a word. The drive was quiet. Katsuki stared out the window, watching the world blur past, one tree after another, wondering how it kept turning when his head stopped. When they arrived back at the dorms, Aizawa pulled the car into a space and cut the engine. But neither of them moved. A long silence stretched between them before Aizawa finally spoke, calm, low, like walking barefoot through glass. "Bakugo." "I know." Katsuki blinked slowly, his voice stuck in the hollow behind his ribs. "I know about the cuts." That made Katsuki's breath hitch, his eyes snap forward. Aizawa didn't look at him with anger. Only sadness. Quiet understanding. "You need time. And help. More than this place can give you right now." Katsuki bit the inside of his cheek, his hands trembling in his lap. "I've already called your parents," Aizawa continued softly. "They're worried. You're going home for a while. Not because you failed, but because you're hurting. And you deserve to be alive." Those last words, "you deserve to be alive," cracked something deep inside him. Katsuki's voice came out quiet, trembling. "Do I?" he asked. "Even after everything I didn't do?" Aizawa turned to face him fully now, his gaze steady but gentle. "You do," he said. "And we're going to help you remember that." Katsuki nodded faintly, his jaw clenched as he fought back another wave of tears. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't argue. He just let someone else carry the weight for a moment. The sky had already begun to darken when they pulled up to his childhood home, the one with the creaky steps and the little crack by the door his mom never fixed. It felt like nothing had changed. But Katsuki had. He had changed so much he barely recognized the boy who used to storm through this doorway, all fire and ambition. His mom was waiting at the door, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed from worry but hardened in a way that only Mitsuki Bakugo could manage. His dad stood a few feet behind her, quieter, gentler, with his hand resting nervously against the doorway. Katsuki didn't say a word as he stepped out of the car. He didn't have to. One look at his face told them everything they feared. Mitsuki rushed forward, stopping just shy of touching him. She looked at him, really looked at him, and her arms dropped to her sides. She started, but the words caught. "You're too thin. And you look like hell." Katsuki gave her a tired, broken smile. "Thanks, Mom." She pulled him in then, a tight, desperate hug that almost knocked the air out of him. She didn't say, "I love you," but the way her hands gripped the back of his sweater, like she was afraid he'd vanish again, said enough. Masaru's hand gently brushed his shoulder as he passed into the house. Aizawa lingered for only a moment. "I'll check in," he said quietly, not like a teacher, but like someone who meant it. "You're not alone in this." Katsuki nodded, still not trusting his voice, and stepped inside. Everything smelled like home laundry detergent, old wood, burnt sugar from the candles his mom lit too often. But it didn't feel the same. He wasn't the same. He dropped his bag by the stairs, his legs too tired to carry him all the way up. Instead, he collapsed onto the old couch in the living room, curling into the side that used to be his favorite when he was little. His head rested on the armrest, and for a second, he let himself believe that if he just closed his eyes long enough, maybe Izuku would still be here. Maybe none of this happened. But the silence pressed too loud against his ears. And reality, it always found a way back in. The stairs creaked under his feet just like they used to. One by one, he climbed them, his body aching from a weight that had nothing to do with muscle. Everything felt slower here, like time dragged its feet in the hallways of this house. When he reached his room, he stood in the doorway for a moment. It was mostly untouched. His mom had cleaned a bit, maybe out of hope or desperation, but it still smelled faintly like ash, cologne, and teenage sweat. The posters were faded. The bedding was the same. And yet, it all felt too small for who he was now. Too small for this grief that clung to him like a second skin. He stepped inside and closed the door quietly behind him. Then, without turning on the light, he collapsed onto his bed face first, not even bothering to pull back the covers. The mattress groaned under his weight. He lay there, motionless, heart thudding in his ears, eyes open and fixed on the familiar cracks in the ceiling. He remembered when Izuku slept in this bed. Just once. Just one night after they'd spent the whole evening watching old hero documentaries and teasing each other under blankets. Izuku had fallen asleep against his shoulder, mumbling something about how warm Katsuki was. He'd pretended to be annoyed. But he had never felt so at peace. Now the bed was too cold. The silence too sharp. And for the first time since he walked through that door, the mask cracked. His shoulders began to shake. A quiet sob escaped, muffled into the pillow. Then another. And another. It wasn't loud, not like before, but it was deeper. Heavier. The kind of crying that came from the bottom of the soul. His hands trembled as he clutched the corner of his blanket and pressed it to his face. "Izuku," he whispered into the dark. "You were supposed to be here with me." He rolled onto his back, staring up at nothing. "I don't know how to fix this," he choked. "I don't know how to live without you. Every time I breathe, it hurts. Every second I'm still here, it feels like I'm failing you all over again." There was a quiet knock on the door. Katsuki wiped his eyes quickly and didn't say anything. After a pause, the door cracked open. His mom peeked in. Her expression was softer than usual, no sharp words or raised eyebrows. Just the gaze of a mother who had been hurting quietly alongside her son. She walked in slowly and sat on the edge of the bed, saying nothing for a moment. Her hand reached out, gentle, brushing a bit of hair from his face. "You don't have to carry all of this alone, you know," she said quietly. Katsuki turned away, biting back the words that burned in his throat. "I wasn't a good person to him," he whispered. "Not always." His mom was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "Maybe not. But you loved him. I saw it. And he loved you, Katsuki. That matters. It still does." He let out a shaky breath. Closed his eyes. "I don't know how to stop hurting," he said. "You don't need to stop," she murmured. "You just need to let yourself feel it. And let us hold the rest." Bakugo's POV. I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that didn't feel like sleep. It felt like grief. Like regret. Like something had been sitting there for weeks, quietly suffocating me, and I had finally stopped trying to push it down. The sunlight leaking through the curtains didn't feel warm, it felt like it was mocking me, trying to shine on a version of me that didn't exist anymore. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to think. I just wanted the ache to stop. And for the first time in a while, I didn't know if I wanted to keep going. My hands trembled as I sat up. Not from cold, but from something deeper, like my body already knew what my mind hadn't fully decided. I looked around my room at the walls that had watched me grow up, that had heard my shouting, my laughter, my silence. It didn't feel like mine anymore. I stood slowly, dragging my feet across the floor. My heart felt like it was somewhere else, buried in a grave I had just visited days ago. Izuku's name still echoed in my head like a soft plea. His laugh, his voice, the way he used to say my name like it meant something. I stepped into the bathroom without turning on the light. The mirror stared back at me and I didn't look. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to see me. There was a moment of breath between the ache and the action where I almost turned around. Almost crawled back into bed. Almost opened my mouth to ask for help. But I didn't. Because something inside me said, "You've already ruined everything." I sat on the edge of the tub, shoulders hunched, hands gripping the sides like they could anchor me to this world a little longer. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes? An hour? Time didn't mean anything anymore. Not since the world stopped spinning the day Izuku did. And then, I reached for the drawer. My sweater sleeves were soaked in tears. My breathing came in shallow, jagged pulls, like I was trying to stay afloat in a storm I'd already let drown me. I didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. The door creaked open slowly, too slowly, and a sliver of light from the hallway broke through the shadows. Katsuki? It was her. My mom. I didn't look up. I didn't move. She gasped one of those tiny, sharp, mother sounds, the kind that cut through everything like glass. I could hear her breath hitch as she took one step into the room. "Oh my God." Katsuki. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to disappear into the tile beneath me. I wanted to go back in time and never let her see me like this. But it was too late. Her footsteps rushed toward me, and then I felt her hands frantic, trembling, grabbing my face, brushing my hair out of my eyes, checking me over like she was afraid I'd already slipped away. "Why didn't you say something?" she whispered, voice breaking into pieces. "Why didn't you tell me it had gotten this bad?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just a sob. Guttural. From somewhere deeper than even I could reach. She pulled me into her arms, rocking me like she used to when I was small, before the yelling, before the pride, before I ever learned to pretend I didn't need comfort. I clung to her sweater like a lifeline. "I'm sorry," I choked, the words barely a breath. "I didn't want you to worry." I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to ask for help. "You don't ever have to ask," she said. "You're my son. If you're hurting, I need to know. I need to help you. Please don't shut me out like this again, Katsuki. I love you too much for that." I cried harder. I cried until my throat burned and my fingers went numb from holding on so tightly. I cried until there was nothing left but silence between us, a silence that, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel lonely. Why Mom didn't ask me to move. She just sat there on the cold tile, her arms around me, like if she let go, I'd vanish. Like she was holding pieces of me I couldn't keep together on my own. Eventually, she leaned back and cupped my face, wiping my cheeks gently with her thumbs, even though new tears just kept falling. "Come on," she said softly, voice hoarse. "Let's get you off the floor, sweetheart." I nodded, barely. My legs shook when I tried to stand, so she helped me. Like I was 5 years old again. Like I hadn't grown taller than her or learned to scream louder. She didn't care. She just tucked me beneath her arm and walked me to my room, slowly. Carefully. She sat me on the edge of my bed, pulled the blanket over my lap, and brushed my hair out of my eyes again. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. I couldn't answer. So I just looked at her. And she understood. She sat beside me, not saying anything, just rubbing small circles on my back like I was made of something fragile. And maybe I was. I leaned my head on her shoulder. The ceiling was quiet again. But in my head I heard his voice. "Kakin," he laughed, soft and teasing. "You're such a grump." I pictured his smile. The freckles that danced when he laughed. His stupid green curls and the way they bounced when he ran down the halls of Aldera, calling my name like he actually believed in me. Like he always had. And for a second, I let myself remember what it felt like to love him without regret. I whispered his name. Just once. Just enough to feel it on my tongue. "Izuku." And then I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall freely, my mother's warmth the only thing holding me steady. I wasn't okay. But I was still here. And maybe, for tonight, that was enough. The next morning in the Bakugo residence. I woke up with the same hollow feeling pressing against my chest, the emptiness that never seemed to leave. All I wanted was to find some kind of peace, a place where the noise inside me could finally quiet. I didn't want to keep carrying the weight of my own pain anymore. And then a small, familiar thought slipped into my mind. My eyes landed on the little scissors resting on my desk. Without fully thinking, I reached for them and made my way to the bathroom, the silence around me growing heavier with every step. I felt the cold edge against my skin, a strange comfort in the sharpness. I didn't realize just how much I needed it until the dull ache beneath my thoughts started to unravel. My vision blurred as the room seemed to sway, and a terrifying question whispered in my mind: is this finally where I'll find rest? Mitsuki's POV. The silence in the house was the kind that didn't feel peaceful, it felt wrong. Like something was missing. Like something had already gone too far. Mitsuki had been calling Katsuki's name for the past few minutes, her voice rising with each attempt. When she finally pushed open the bathroom door, the world stopped. Her heart dropped before she even had time to scream. Everything after that happened in blurs: her shouting for Masaru, the sound of her phone hitting the floor as she called emergency services, and the cold rush of panic as sirens echoed in the distance. The sirens didn't sound real. They were too sharp, too distant, like they belonged in someone else's nightmare, not hers. Mitsuki couldn't stop shaking, her hand clutching Katsuki's tighter than she meant to as the paramedics lifted him into the ambulance. Masaru held her shoulders, trying to keep her steady, but he looked just as pale. Neither of them said a word the entire ride to the hospital. When they arrived, the fluorescent lights of the air felt too bright, too sterile, too cruel. Nurses moved quickly, doctors spoke quietly, and Katsuki was taken away behind a curtain without a promise of when they'd see him again. Inko showed up not long after, her eyes already red-rimmed with tears. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside Mitsuki in the waiting room, held her hand, and let the silence between them carry everything words couldn't. Time passed like water dripping from a leaking faucet, slow, constant, unbearable. Then a doctor approached them, clipboard in hand and a careful expression on his face. "He's stable," he said. "But this wasn't just a one-time thing, was it?" Mitsuki looked at the floor, her jaw trembling. "We'd like to talk to you about psychiatric inpatient care," the doctor continued gently. "For his safety, and for his healing." In that moment, the weight of everything finally broke. Mitsuki didn't argue. Inko quietly nodded. Masaru looked away, blinking fast. Because no one wanted this. But none of them could lose him too. In the hospital room, Mitsuki carefully opened the door, her fingers trembling on the handle like it might shatter under her grip. She didn't want to make a sound, didn't want to break whatever fragile silence was holding the room together. The moment the door creaked open, her breath caught in her throat. There he was. Her son. Her Katsuki. Lying still in a hospital bed that looked far too small to hold everything he was carrying. His arms were bandaged, pale skin swallowed in white gauze and medical tape. His face, always so full of fire and noise, was quiet now. Too quiet. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind that came from fighting a war no one else could see. She didn't say anything. She couldn't. Her throat burned. Masaru stepped in behind her, his arm brushing hers in silent support, and even Inko, gentle, grieving Inko, had to turn away, covering her mouth to hold back the sob that rose in her chest. Mitsuki took a shaky breath and stepped forward. "Katsuki?" Her voice cracked. His eyes fluttered open slowly. At first unfocused. Then the recognition came, and with it, shame. A deep, painful kind of shame that settled into his features like a shadow. Katsuki tried, but the words slipped away. He turned his head toward the window instead. "I'm sorry." That was all he could say. But for Mitsuki, it was enough to break her heart all over again. She sat down on the chair beside his bed, slowly, like her knees might give out if she didn't move carefully. Her hand reached out, hovered over his bandaged wrist, then rested gently on top. "You don't have to be sorry," she whispered, eyes welling. "You're here. You're still here. That's what matters." He didn't answer. His throat worked like he was trying not to cry. Trying not to feel. "I was so scared," Mitsuki said, her voice trembling now too. "I thought I lost you. Katsuki, do you know what that would have done to me? To your dad? To Inko?" His lip quivered and he blinked hard. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. "I just didn't know how to keep hurting like this, and still stay." Mitsuki leaned forward, brushing his hair back gently from his face like she used to when he was little. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Do you hear me? We're going to get you help. Real help. And it's not weakness. It's not failure. It's love. It's survival." There was silence again. Heavy. Honest. Katsuki looked at her with tear-filled eyes. "Do you still love me?" he asked. "Even after all of it?" Mitsuki's answer came without hesitation. She stood up, leaned over, and wrapped him into a hug, careful but close. Her arms shaking with all the things she couldn't say fast enough. "More than anything," she whispered into his hair. "Always. No matter what. You are my son. You are mine. And nothing, not even your pain, can change that." Katsuki finally let himself cry. And this time, he wasn't alone. There was a soft knock at the door. Mitsuki didn't let go right away. She pulled back slowly, brushing Katsuki's tears with her thumbs before looking toward the door. Katsuki wiped his face with the blanket, breathing shakily as he tried to gather what little strength he had left. The door creaked open, and Aizawa stepped inside quiet as ever, dark circles under his eyes even deeper than usual. He didn't say anything at first. Just nodded at Mitsuki and Masu, then offered a soft glance toward Inko before settling his gaze on Katsuki. "Hey," he said gently. "Can I come in?" Katsuki gave the smallest nod. Aizawa walked in and pulled a chair up to the side of the bed. He sat down, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together in front of him. He looked like he'd been holding in a lot, and now wasn't the time to hold any more. "I'm not here as your teacher right now," he said. "I'm here because I care. And because I've seen too many kids try to carry everything on their own." Katsuki's lip trembled, but he didn't speak. "I know you're hurting," Aizawa continued. "And I know you don't feel like you deserve help. But you do. Even if your brain tells you otherwise. Even if the guilt screams louder than anything else. You still deserve to heal. You still deserve to be here." The room was still. Katsuki blinked at him, eyes red and raw. "I didn't want to die," he said, barely above a whisper. "I just didn't know how to live with it. With what I did. With losing him." Aizawa nodded, steady and patient. "That's something we'll work on together," he said. "One day at a time." Katsuki looked down at his hands. "Is it okay to not know if I want help yet?" he asked. "I don't want to feel this way, but it feels like the only thing I have left." Aizawa leaned forward. "You don't have to have answers right now. You just have to stay. That's all we ask." Katsuki swallowed hard, his voice cracking as he whispered, "Okay." And in that fragile moment, surrounded by people who refused to give up on him, Katsuki allowed the tiniest flicker of hope to slip through the cracks of his grief. It wasn't healing. Not yet. But it was a beginning. After a long moment of silence, Aizawa rose slowly from his chair. His joints cracked a little as he stood, the weight of sleepless nights settling in his shoulders. "I'll give you all a few minutes," he said quietly, glancing at Mitsuki, Masaru, and Inko. "But we should talk soon about what comes next." Katsuki looked over at him, not with fear, just exhaustion. An understanding, maybe. Aizawa gave a small, steady nod, then stepped out of the room. The door clicked shut. Mitsuki turned back to her son. She smoothed a hand over his blanket, fingers brushing the hem like she could stitch everything back together with enough tenderness. "Katsuki," she said softly, voice still frayed at the edges, "the doctors, they mentioned something about getting you real help. Somewhere you can stay for a little while. Somewhere safe." His brows furrowed, but he didn't speak. Masaru shifted beside her, clearing his throat. "It wouldn't be forever. Just until you're in a better place. You don't have to keep doing this alone." Katsuki stared at the ceiling, swallowing hard. "I don't want to be locked up," he muttered. "You wouldn't be," Mitsuki said quickly, reaching for his hand. "It's not a punishment. It's a place where people understand what you're feeling. Where they can help you figure it out. Not make it all disappear overnight, but teach you how to keep going." Inko, still seated quietly nearby, added, "Izuku would want that for you, Katsuki. He'd want you to feel safe. To learn how to breathe again." The mention of his name made Katsuki's breath catch. He finally looked at his mother. "Will you still visit me?" Her eyes softened with tears. "Every single day they let me." He looked at Masaru. "Will you be mad at me if I go?" Masaru shook his head. "Never. I'll be proud of you for trying." Katsuki blinked down at their hands, then closed his eyes for a long moment. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll go." And that was it. Not a miracle. Not a fix. But the moment he stopped running. The moment he let someone reach in. Bakugo's POV. The car ride was quiet. Too quiet. Katsuki sat in the back seat, staring blankly out the window as the buildings blurred by, his fingers twitching in his lap like they were searching for something to hold onto. Mitsuki sat beside him, hands clenched tightly, as if letting go would shatter her. No one knew what to say. What could be said? When they arrived, the building looked plain. Clean walls, soft colors, and a quiet garden out front that felt more like a painting than real life. Katsuki didn't move until his mother gently reached for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. Inside, the air was cooler, too clean. A nurse with kind eyes greeted them and began to speak, But Katsuki couldn't hear much over the buzzing in his head. His name, a few instructions, the word, routine. All of it blurred together. He could only nod. Then came the moment he was led through a hallway, away from his parents. Mitsuki's voice was shaky as she whispered, "We'll visit soon, baby. Please be okay." Katsuki turned for a moment and met her eyes, red-rimmed and wet. He gave the tiniest nod before the door closed between them. The room they gave him was small. A single bed, a window with no latch, a plain desk, and walls painted in muted pastels that made him feel like he didn't belong here. Like a piece of ash in a room meant for light. He sat on the bed and stared at his hands. Bandaged. Tired. Shaking. He was alone. But maybe, just maybe, alone in a place that wanted him to stay alive. He didn't cry. Not yet. But the weight in his chest made it hard to breathe. Katsuki lay back on the bed, the mattress firm and sterile beneath him. It wasn't exactly uncomfortable, just foreign. Everything in the room felt too quiet, too clean, like it had never been touched by real life. The hum of the overhead lights buzzed faintly, a low static that filled the silence around him. There were no explosions here. No shouting. No Izuku. Just his heartbeat, steady but tired. Just the ceiling above him, blank and gray. He felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that no amount of rest could cure. It didn't hit all at once, it seeped in slowly, filling him like water in a sinking ship. He turned his head slightly, eyes landing on the single chair in the corner where his mother had sat not long ago. She had cried when she thought he was asleep. He'd heard her, soft sniffles muffled by her sleeve, and he didn't know what hurt more, the pain in her voice or the guilt in his chest. He pulled the thin blanket up to his chin, suddenly cold despite the room being warm. A hospital. He was in a hospital. A place for people who couldn't carry everything on their own anymore. Was that who he was now? His throat ached not from crying, but from holding everything back for so long. Maybe now was the time to stop pretending he was okay. Maybe now he had no other choice. And even then, a part of him still whispered, "What would Izuku say if he saw you like this? Would he forgive you for not holding on longer? Or would he just sit here with you, quiet and soft, and say it's okay to be this broken?" His eyes burned again. Maybe it was okay to feel something again. Maybe that's why he was still here. The knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant. Katsuki turned his head slowly, the sterile air of the hospital room pressing in on his chest. It opened just enough for Aizawa to slip through. He didn't speak right away. He never did. Instead, he took one slow look at the boy in the bed, his student, the one who'd been falling apart right under his nose, and his shoulders lowered with quiet, heavy grief. Katsuki didn't sit up. He didn't have the energy to fake being okay anymore. "I figured you might not want to talk," Aizawa said quietly, voice low and worn, "but I didn't want you to be alone either." Katsuki swallowed, his throat tight. He stared up at the ceiling again. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," Aizawa replied, stepping closer to the bed. "Just listen if that's easier." There was silence for a beat, then Katsuki broke it, quiet, bitter, but real. "I feel like a ghost. I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up and none of this happened. That he's still alive. That I didn't." He cut himself off. Aizawa sat down in the chair beside him. "That you didn't lose him?" Katsuki nodded once, barely moving. I tried to go with him." The confession hung between them, fragile and raw. "I thought, maybe it'd be better. For me. For everyone else. If I wasn't here." His voice cracked at the end. He didn't try to hide it. Aizawa leaned forward slightly. "Katsuki, I wish you'd told me you were hurting like this." "I thought it'd go away," Katsuki whispered. "I thought if I trained harder, focused on something else, I wouldn't have to feel it. But the grief, it just followed me. It doesn't leave. Not even when I'm asleep." Aizawa didn't push him. Just sat there, letting the words come on their own. Katsuki let out a shaky breath. "I didn't want anyone to see me like this. Pathetic. Crying over someone I never deserved in the first place." "You loved him," Aizawa said gently. "There's nothing weak about grieving someone you love." Katsuki closed his eyes, trying to hold it all together. "They want to admit me somewhere," he murmured. "Dad, They think I need more help. Aizawa didn't deny it. Do you? Katsuki didn't answer right away. But after a long pause, he nodded just once. A small, vulnerable nod, the kind that meant everything. I don't know how to fix myself, he whispered. You don't have to fix everything at once, Aizawa replied. You just have to stay. That's the first step. And in that room full of silence and scars, Katsuki cried again, not just for the pain, but for the tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. My eyes closing on their own, and I knew that I needed sleep. I didn't do that much, so it would be a good idea. When Katsuki wakes up, I blinked groggily, my eyes scanning the unfamiliar room with dull confusion. For a moment, everything felt distant, foggy, like I was floating between sleep and something heavier. Then it hit me like a quiet wave. Right. I was in the hospital. A place meant to help people like me. People who were hurting. I sat up slowly, trying not to wince at the stiffness in my body, and turned my head toward the window. The sky was painted in pale blue and soft gold morning. Morning meant the routine. That routine. It crept into my mind like an old memory I didn't ask for. First, the antidepressants, tiny pills that were supposed to fix something broken inside me. Then the shower, which felt more like washing off the weight of yesterday than anything else. After that, journaling. 14 minutes of trying to make sense of the chaos in my chest, writing down feelings I could barely name. Then something like a class I still wasn't sure what to call it. Group therapy? Emotional school? Whatever it was, it felt like walking into a room full of mirrors, each one reflecting the parts of me I was too afraid to look at. With a sigh, I turned my gaze to the small clock above the door. 6 a.m., exactly 30 minutes until I had to leave this sterile room and face another day of pretending I was ready to heal. I didn't know if I could do it, but I knew I had to try. Even if it was just to survive another sunrise. I looked back up at the small hospital clock mounted above the doorway. 8:30. It read in dull red numbers, glowing faintly in the soft morning light that leaked through the frosted windows. The numbers blurred for a second as I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the fog in my head. But I had to go get my medication. I stood up slowly, each movement feeling heavier than the last. My slippers made soft shuffling sounds against the linoleum as I walked down the hallway, passing rooms filled with quiet or cries, with blank stares or scribbled notes taped to walls. I glanced at a boy around my age, staring out a window like he was waiting for something that would never come. Another girl sat with her knees to her chest, headphones pressed to her ears, lost somewhere I couldn't reach. Were they worse off than me? Or did I just think I didn't belong because I refused to believe I was as broken as I really was? It was just one mistake. One bad night. One thought that crawled too far. That's what I kept telling myself, but it echoed differently every time. Louder. Sharper. Colder. I felt it again, that tightness in my chest. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed a storm. I thought I was going to be sick. But nothing came up except another shaky breath. When I finally got my pills from the nurse, her voice was soft, too soft, like she was afraid I'd break. Maybe I already had. I thanked her with a nod and wandered back to my room, fingers curled tightly around the tiny cup. The shower was rushed like everything else here. 10 minutes, no more. I stood under the lukewarm stream, letting it hit my shoulders like raindrops on glass. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the tiled wall and waited to feel something, anything. Maybe the warmth. Maybe peace. But all I felt was the weight. So, boys. Back in my room, I grabbed my journal. I had to write about my feelings for exactly 14 minutes. I hated the timer. I hated the word feelings. I hated how much I had to say. I didn't even know I had this much to say. As I sat cross-legged on the bed, I reached for the only thing that ever truly grounded me, my small MP3 player. I clicked it on, fingers trembling slightly, and let the first notes of "I Can't Handle Change" fill the silence like a breath I'd been holding for too long. I don't really know what to do now. I just keep waiting for something to change. The lyrics cut into me like a whisper through a crack in the wall. My pen scratched along the page as I tried to keep up with the thoughts screaming inside me. The song played quietly, but its words echoed louder than anything else. I didn't know what to do with myself anymore. I didn't know where to put the pain. The song knew that. It understood me in ways no one else ever could. I finished the timer and closed the journal slowly, my fingers lingering on the cover. Then I ran or walked faster than I should have to the little group therapy room they called a class. I was nervous. Terrified, actually. I scanned the room as I walked in. The others were already sitting down, silent or fidgeting or too numb to care. Some of them looked like they'd been here forever. Others like they were still falling. And me? I couldn't tell anymore. Maybe I looked okay on the outside. Maybe I looked like a storm had just passed. Or maybe I looked like one still coming. I took a seat near the corner, hugging my knees a little, headphones still dangling from my neck, the song still looping in my head. It's not fair that I can't be there. No one said anything to me. And I wasn't sure if I wanted them to. But deep down, I kind of hoped someone would. Just once. The group session had ended, but the weight of it hadn't. I left the room feeling heavier than when I entered, like each word spoken clung to me like ash from something still smoldering. I couldn't breathe. Not really. I kept my head down as I walked the hallways back to my room, feeling the air press into my chest like a closing fist. Every corner of this place echoed with reminders. Scratched words on old chairs. A half-torn poster on the wall that said, "Healing takes time." I hated that phrase. Healing takes time, but what if you don't have any left? Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, face first into the pillow, like I could bury everything inside me. The walls were too white. The silence too sharp. I turned on my MP3 player again, hoping for something, maybe comfort, maybe distraction. But this time I didn't go for something. So, this time, I chose Burning Pile. All my troubles on a burning pile, all lit up, and I start to smile. The beat was upbeat, but it felt cruel. I didn't want to smile. I didn't want to dance. I wanted to scream. I stared at the ceiling as the chorus echoed through my ears. I thought about everything I'd piled up over the years: guilt, fear, shame, Izuku's ghost, my mistakes, the things I said, the things I never did. All of it. A tower of wreckage built from my own hands. And I kept adding to it like it was all I knew how to do. I imagined setting it all on fire, watching the flames take it, erase it, make it beautiful for just a moment before it turned to nothing. Maybe then I'd feel clean. Maybe then I could breathe again. I rolled over slowly, staring at the MP3 player in my hands. My fingers trembled. I don't even know why. Maybe because I knew I couldn't keep doing this. Or maybe because part of me still wanted to. Still wanted to burn it all. I whispered to myself, just barely, "I'm tired of hurting." I don't know if I was talking to the ceiling, to Izuku, to the universe, or to no one at all. But saying it out loud made it feel real. I'm tired of living in a body that feels like punishment. The music kept playing. I'm afraid of everything, of the dark, of the light, of my thoughts, of the quiet. I squeezed my eyes shut. I wanted to cry, but I didn't have the tears. I felt hollow, cold, like someone had scooped out all the parts of me that could still feel hope and left me with the ashes. But in the next breath, I thought of Izuku again. Not the grave, not the past tense, but his laugh, his eyes, the way he never gave up on me. And for a moment, just one, I thought, what would he say if he saw me like this? Would he reach for my hand? Would he sit in silence until I spoke? Would he cry for me the way I cry for him? That thought was enough to pull me out of the fire just a little. Not enough to stop the ache. Not enough to make it okay. But enough to make me stay. Even if just for now. Evening bled into the hospital through soft amber light, smudging the corners of the sterile room in a gold that felt too warm for how cold I still felt inside. I hadn't eaten a full meal in days? Weeks? I couldn't remember. Everything before this place blurred into a single feeling, numb. But now, they brought me a tray, something simple. The bowl of rice. Some tofu. A carton of milk. Bland. But the warm. I stared at it for a while. Just stared. I didn't feel hungry. But I also didn't want to feel empty anymore. So I picked up the spoon. The first bite burned my throat, not because it was hot, but because it was real. Because it tasted like living. Like staying. Like a decision I hadn't made yet. I ate in silence. Slow. Robotic. Like maybe if I chewed long enough, I could convince myself I still belonged here. That there was still a place for me in a world where Izuku no longer walked. When I finished, I left the tray by the door and crawled back into the small bed that wasn't mine, but cradled my aching body like it had always been waiting. The nurse gave me the usual, a paper cup with my medication, a quiet nod, and a soft reminder to get some rest. I swallowed the pills dry and curled up on the bed, pulling the blanket around my shoulders like armor. The weight of it pressed gently against my ribs almost like a hug. I wished it was. I picked up the MP3 player again. This time I didn't scroll. I knew what I wanted. Juliet, by Cavetown started to play through the earbuds. Gentle guitar chords. A voice that trembled like mine did when I spoke at night. I need to cry, but I can't get anything out of my eyes or my head. I stared at the ceiling. There was that line. Like someone had cracked open my chest and put words to everything I couldn't say. Did I die? I'm waiting for someone to save me. I rolled onto my side, gripping the blanket tighter. I felt like Juliet. Maybe not the romance or the tragedy, but the longing. The stillness. The fear of disappearing quietly. Of never being found. I wondered if anyone would ever really know me. If I even wanted to be known. I thought about all the things I hadn't said. All the parts of me that still felt broken and bloody and loud, even in the quiet. I thought about how Izuku used to stay up with me after nightmares. About how he'd whisper, "You're not as bad as you think you are, Kaken." I didn't believe him then. I'd give anything to hear him lie to me like that again. I felt a tear finally escape down the side of my face, slipping into the pillow like it belonged there. And for the first time in a while, I let it. I didn't try to wipe it away. I didn't try to be strong. There's pride. No sobs. No noise. Just wet, silent grief. Just me and a song and a room that smelled like antiseptic and ache. The lights dimmed around 9. Routine. I turned off the music, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and whispered into the dark. "Good night, Izuku." Then silence. But not the scary kind. Just quiet. Heavy. Still. Bakugo's POV. I woke up to the sound of birds, soft and distant like a memory I almost forgot I loved. The morning light came in through the narrow hospital window, pale and quiet, draping itself across the floor like a sigh. I blinked against it, unsure if I was ready to call this healing. My bones still ached, my heart still pulsed with the echoes of everything I'd buried, but for the first time in what felt like years, the air didn't feel like it was trying to kill me. I sat up slowly, my body still heavy but not unbearable, like the kind of tired you feel after swimming too far, too deep, and somehow making it back to shore. I ran my fingers along the soft edges of the hospital blanket, thinking about all the nights I didn't think I'd ever get out of this place, out of myself. The self-hate. The silence. The guilt. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes quieter. Manageable. Like a dull song you hum when no one's around. Today's the day I get discharged. They told me I was strong. I didn't believe them. But now I think strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just waking up and choosing not to leave. Choosing to breathe, even when everything in you begs for silence. I stood, slowly, shakily, and began to pack what little I had. The pills, the journals, the notes I never sent. My hands trembled, not from fear but from something softer. Something that felt like, maybe, just maybe, tomorrow wouldn't hurt so much. The hallway smelled like old soap and sterile dreams, but it didn't make me flinch the way it used to. I walked with slow steps, each footfall a quiet promise to myself. I'm still here. I passed by the rec room, the faded couch where I cried so quietly it burned. The wall where I once leaned, biting my lip to keep from screaming. The chair where I wrote to Izuku. Each space carried a shadow of me, of a boy who thought the world forgot him. I gave them a glance, not to mourn but to thank. Even the darkest corners kept me alive. At the end of the corridor, Aizawa waited with a tired smile, the kind only someone who's watched over you without blinking can give. He didn't say much, he never had to. Just a nod. A pat on the back that said I knew you could do it, even when you didn't. That was enough to make my throat tighten. I looked away quickly, pretending the fluorescent light was bothering my eyes. Outside, the world was bigger than I remembered. The sun wasn't loud, but it was there, warming my skin in quiet places that had been cold for too long. The wind brushed past me like an old friend, and for once, I let it touch me without shrinking away. My hands were stuffed in my hoodie, the same one I wore the day I broke torn, but still mine. We didn't go straight home. Aizawa drove us to a small park. A place filled with trees and silence and benches that didn't ask for much. I sat on one while he made a call, maybe to my mom. Maybe to the world. I stared up at the sky and thought of Izuku. Deku, I whispered inside my chest. Are you proud of me? I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry I didn't understand your pain until I met mine. The clouds shifted. And maybe, just maybe, that was his way of answering. When my mom walked into the room, her eyes were already wet, not the kind of crying that came from fear anymore, but the kind that came from relief. She didn't run to hug me. She stood there, staring like she was trying to memorize this version of me, the one who made it. I gave her the smallest nod, and that was all she needed. Her arms wrapped around me, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself lean into her warmth. We didn't say much on the drive home. The silence wasn't heavy this time, it was soft, like the closing of a book you weren't sure would ever have an ending. I returned to UA slowly, one step at a time. Some days were harder than others, but I kept walking forward. I went back to training, to classes, to standing beside my classmates as a hero in the making. The days didn't always feel good, but they felt possible. I started to believe I could become the kind of hero Deku always saw in me. Maybe even better. And on the days it got hard again, I reminded myself of everything I survived. Of everything I healed from. I wasn't perfect, but I was healing, and that was more than enough. This isn't a story of someone who never broke. It's the story of someone who shattered, and still chose to build something out of the piece. Teaser for the sequel. Even after healing, the shadows don't vanish, they just learn to sleep beside the light. It's been months since Katsuki walked out of that hospital. The weight of what happened doesn't disappear, not really. It lingers in quiet mornings, in late-night stares at the ceiling, in the echo of a voice he'll never hear again. But life goes on, and so does he. UA is changing. The world is watching. And Katsuki Bakugo, still grieving, still growing, is learning what it means to carry both pain and purpose in the same breath. This time, the stakes aren't just about becoming a hero, they're about becoming a whole person. But healing is never a straight line. When old ghosts return and new battles rise, will he be strong enough to face them? The story continues. And this time, Katsuki's not running from it.